Hi, this is Brandy Shantz, and you're listening to Living Chronic. Today, I'd like to talk about advocacy. This week was Advocacy Day on the Hill with the Crohn's Colitis Foundation, and of course, I participated. We were advocating for two bills specifically, the Safe Step Act and Help Copays Act. Both are very important to Crohn's and colitis patients. Both bills are very important to many patients around this country. First is the Safe Step Act. This bill provides an avenue for patients to appeal decisions by the insurance companies mandating that you go back on a lower cost drug or start with a lower cost drug rather than going straight to the drug that your doctor has prescribed. So many people who have had Crohn's or colitis or any other medical issue really can probably attest to this. Your doctor prescribes a drug, you go put it in, and the insurance company comes back and says, no, why don't you go back and start on something like, say, prednisone. I learned this the hard way personally. I have been on government health care my entire life. My father was in the Navy. I commissioned in the Army the day I graduated college. So I've always had TRICARE or access to a military treatment facility. I currently have access to the Veterans Affairs Hospital as a disabled veteran, so I was never really familiar with private insurance. I was just given the drug that the doctor prescribed me, no questions asked. So I learned it the hard way. I received a flyer in the mail about Johns Hopkins military plan, and I thought, well, that sounds great. Johns Hopkins, it's the best, right? So I did decide to move on to that plan. Unfortunately, what that experience taught me was that the insurance company isn't necessarily going to approve the drug that works. Of course, in hindsight, it's all a little ironic. Turns out Humira, that's the drug they tried to deny me, did cause a lot of pain in my life. But at the time, it was the only drug that had gotten me into remission. And of course, it was a very emotional experience for me because I had spent a year unable to do anything. I was in and out of the hospital. I couldn't do the things I loved. I couldn't go out places. I was not able to run, which was a huge hit for me because running's always my happiness. It was a very difficult year. So when that happened, it was so emotional. Of course, I was in tears. My doctor was working, trying to get the drug approved. They wanted me to go back on prednisone. I didn't want to blow up like a balloon for no reason because we know that did not get me into remission. It was not enough to sustain anything. So fortunately, I got real lucky. There was a woman who works at TRICARE. She answered the phone when I called. She heard me crying. She understood my plight, and she used a loophole to get me back into TRICARE so that I could once again get the medication that I needed. Of course, I was very lucky having that experience, but all over this country, there are patients who don't have that avenue. They have no avenue other than the one insurance plan they have. So this is super important for anybody who is suffering from an illness, who knows someone suffering from an illness, a family member, a loved one. I really encourage everyone to look up the Safe Step Act, and if you can, reach out to your representative, say, hey, can you please support this bill? It's very important to me. The Crohn's Colitis Foundation does have a link on their website to make it really easy for you. The second act is the Help Copays Act. I mean, if you're an American, you know about copays. You know about the cost of drugs. It's so difficult. That same exact scenario I just told you about. I thought to myself, as I'm crying, trying to get back on my Humira, I was about to miss a dose, and I thought, you know what? I'm very fortunate in life. Let me go ahead and pay for this 1 month, and we'll get this fixed. Well, that's when I went to the Walgreens and tried to pick up my medication, and they told me, well, with your insurance discount, it's now $10,000. Okay, well, I can't just pay $10,000 a month for medication. So obviously I had to go back and again, look for the help. There are charities out there. There's a lot of resources, but we really shouldn't have to have this problem. So we need more to help people pay these kinds of big copays, help people to get their medications. So this is another really great bill to help patients. And I'm very thankful for the Crohn's Colitis Foundation and everything that they do for us. It's a wonderful organization. I cannot say enough about the Crohn's Colitis Foundation. So again, even if you're not a Crohn's colitis patient, please go to the website. They have everything set up there for you to ask your representative, please support this bill. You can also call your representative or write your representative, ask them to join the Crohn's Colitis Caucus. Very important. We have to do more. And I realize that sometimes people think, well, Congress doesn't really do anything. It is very frustrating. Right now, there's questions, will the government shut down? This is not the most efficient body, I understand. But they also do some great things. And with some hard work and reaching out, we can do more for patients because there's still so much more that needs to be done. And that's what I really want to hopefully get some people excited about, at least doing a little something. Those two bills I just discussed, you can just simply hit enter, put in your address, hit enter. That's easy. If you have some extra time, please look through some of these bills that are out there. There are a lot of things that could help patients. I just wrote an article this week about trust, and I felt it was very important. I'm on the Hill this week advocating for great things, but the lack of trust in institutions in this country is a problem because we need trust. I depend on people. You'd probably depend on people. We all depend on people. We depend on medical professionals and institutions, government help. This isn't easy. Let me tell you, being sick is not for the faint of heart. So we need institutions to step up and be trustworthy. So we need to build that trust somehow. How do we do it? I don't know. We're in a place right now where people look at Congress and they think, well, there's a group of people ready to set fire to the entire country. Oh, well. But I hope that we can find some ways to build that trust and reach out and make things better. I know everybody who's listened to my podcast, if you know me personally, if you've read my blog, go to my Substack, you definitely know that when I first became ill, ignorance is bliss. I acted like everything was fine. If I ignore it, it'll go away. If I don't tell anybody what I'm suffering through, it'll be fine. I don't need to ask for help. I just need to figure this out on my own. Well, if you've been listening, you also know it led to quite the breakdown. Well, one piece of it. I definitely should have done better at taking care of myself and asking for help. But now that I'm here, now that I am reaching out to other patients, now that I have so many great guests that I've gotten to know on my podcast, I'm really doing more to learn what we need as patients to help us. And it's a lot. I left my career because there was no way I could do that with my Crohn's disease. And believe me, there's so much that has changed since that point. Back then, we didn't really talk about work from home. Now, of course, in that career field, I still couldn't work from home. Intelligence, it's all done in a SCIF, secret place. Trust me, there's nothing you can do at home unless you have a very specific job that includes unclassified work. But there was no way I would be able to work at home during long periods of time when I was dealing with a flare. So that there's not much I can do about, but there is a lot more we can do something about. We need to do more to help disabled and chronically ill patients to remain in the workforce, to change careers. Next week, I'm interviewing a really great coach. She's the only chronic illness career coach in the United States of America, one of only 3 in the world. That alone is just amazing to me. So many people, especially women, 80% of autoimmune disease patients are women right now. That's a big number, and it's really important because we need women to stay in the workforce. And if you can't get to work and there's no accommodation to help you, you end up having to leave the workforce. So we need to do more around that. I know that there's a lot out there, there's a lot of award for hiring disabled workers, for helping people, but it's just not enough. You get penalized for having a gap in your resume. Why? So I don't even really have a gap in my resume. I started a business and was very successful. I would like to go back to corporate America. I just would. I'm in remission right now. I've been through a lot. It's time for me to do something that's very fulfilling to me, something that's going to bring me joy. It's very important to me to wake up in the morning and do something fulfilling that brings me joy. And frankly, my business, while it continued making money and it kept me afloat, it didn't bring me joy. I was offered a job in the government, and I know that all of the disabilities help me. I'm a disabled veteran. I'm a Schedule A disabled patient. But here's the kicker. Despite the pay range being very large and me having over 20 years of experience, I was offered $50,000 a year less than my base pay from 15 years ago. And they were shocked when I said I couldn't take it. They felt I should be very grateful to re-enter government work, even though I had run a business for 10 years. Because they said, well, you're disabled. You must need the work. Well, actually, I don't. I can continue running my business just fine. I wanted to do something more fulfilling. I didn't want to starve. These are all little problems, and I'm coming across them one by one as I go, as I'm learning more and more each day. But advocacy is the way we're going to really get through this. So that's why I thought it was very important to talk about today. It's important to work within the system as best you can, make good trouble when you need to. But part of this is working to help bring some trust back because we need it. What I'm afraid of is this lack of trust leading to an even worse situation for patients like us or future patients like us. I mean, when the pandemic hit, I had no idea I was going to go through this 19-month reaction to Humira that was going to destroy my life in so many ways. And while there's a lot of blame to go around, the FDA and their lack of communication, the abysmal adverse reaction database that they have, lack of, just paying attention on behalf of doctors and reading my medication list. It's right there at the top. So much blame to go around. But part of it is also that it was so difficult to get a doctor's appointment during the pandemic. I had to wait 3, 5, 6 months to get in to see the next specialist. In the meantime, I lost my ability to walk. So what does this have to do with trust in institutions? Well, and I know everybody's got an opinion, but the lack of trust in the medical community, and yes, you are correct. I have so much distrust in this community after what's happened to me. And it's just deserved. It's just deserved. But part of what happened to me is just medical professionals being overworked. And that's what comes back to the advocacy again. There are bills that have been introduced that would bring in specialized visas so we could get doctors, nurses, specialists from other companies or other countries, bring them in, give them a visa. We need more medical professionals. It's very difficult for me to say, well, this doctor really messed up when that doctor has 10 minutes per patient and an overload of patients that he or she just can't even get to because they're so overworked. That's a problem. So there's a lot of reason for mistrust. I'm the first to admit that I am very skeptical of any doctor that I talk to. I just don't expect the best, but that's my experience, and it's other people's experiences as well. So here we are. We're going into a period now where more and more Americans aren't getting vaccines at all. And I understand being skeptical of a lot of things because, believe me, I question a lot these days because so much has been done to really change my life in a negative way. But we have to find some way to get that trust back. We have to find it. work through advocacy, try to get more doctors out there, call your representative. We need that because what I'm afraid of is I have another medical emergency and I still can't get in to see a doctor because a good percentage of America has now foregone a polio vaccine. It's just not a good scenario. So I'm expecting the worst, but I'm hoping for the best. And I hope that just listening to this, it might at least encourage one or two people to get out there. It's all easy to find on the internet. You can look at every bill that's been introduced, every bill that's being worked up, read through it. There's a lot of great stuff out there, a lot of bipartisan effort. The two bills that I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast are both bipartisan. So these are not partisan issues. Every constituency has a sick patient, or two, or three, or 3,000. I don't care where you come from. So it's really important to, do what you can. We can't do it all, but I do try to take a certain amount of time each week to look at what's out there, research a new issue about patients, lack of doctors, need for some better laws around disability employment. FDA, get it together with that adverse reaction database and get a better communications plan. That's what I don't understand. I know that there's a good number, I'm going to say every young person graduating college today with a communications degree could put together a strategic communications plan for the FDA that would blow the one they have out of the water. I know it for a fact. We don't even need to make it a big paying position. We don't have to bring in the big guns with 30 years of experience. Anything's better than the system they have today. So it's just little things sometimes, but those little things make a big difference. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably like me, chronically ill patient. You might have a family member or a friend who's chronically ill or suffering from something. So you know how desperate we feel. You know what it feels like to lose your life as you know it. You know what it feels like to lose something important to you. And it's very difficult to look at anything as a positive. The glass has been half empty for me for a long time. But I'm trying to make it half full. And I think the advocacy is the right road. So even just a little bit, if you have time, go to the Crohn's Colitis Foundation website, look up their advocacy. You can just go on there, put in your address, click enter, you're done, and you've done your job. If you want to get further involved, please go to my website. I try to put as many bills on there as I can. Heck, just send me a message. I'll send you the links to every possible resource to read about as many bills as you want. And let's all get involved because we need to help ourselves. As has been learned so many times on this podcast, there is no Superman. There's nobody coming to save us. We have to save ourselves. So let's save ourselves. Thank you for listening. You've been listening to Living Chronic.